let's face it, we all knew this was coming sooner or later. What is shocking, though, is this surprisingly has nothing at all to do with the staff team. In fact, they seem to actually be in a decent place right now, at least, most of the time. With sufficient leadership? Wow, who could have imagined that? Had to happen eventually, certainly couldn't be worse than past management. So a couple years ago, I posted a video which was more of a highlight from a stream I did over on Twitch because that's about as much effort as I could be bothered to put into said video, discussing an at the time recent event pertaining to why I almost made the decision to quit Hypixel, which you can find a link to somewhere around here if I remember to include it. In that video, I explained how the worst part of the server that created the most absolutely horrendous experiences was, and in my opinion still is, the community. Of course, it should go without saying that there are many wonderful people among the player base. In fact, I'd even go as far to say that the good ones are the majority. But the toxic and negative side is more often than not exceptionally vocal and can at times be a bit intense. Obviously, this is nothing new. I have been on the internet for a long time, probably longer than some Hypixel players have even been alive. And I'm well aware the internet is not always a pleasant place. Heck, I still remember being 11 years old in my first ever chat room, and some creepy dude asked me, as a 6th grader, if I was a virgin. Really kind of set the tone for what a weird place the internet is going forward. And goodness knows, I've dealt with my fair share of crap just on Hypixel alone. I was on the staff team dealing with some of the worst for nearly 3 years. I've had people harass me for years on end, death threats against myself, my friends, my fiance, attempts to dox me. I've been told to, how can I say this in a YouTube-friendly way? I've been told to commit permanent game over more times than I can count in a surprising amount of creative ways. One time I muted a guy for an hour in the middle of a blitz game and his friend said he was going to have forcible intercourse with me until I bled to death. Again, please don't demonetize me, YouTube. Like I said, some of these people can get quite creative, severely disturbed and in urgent need of therapy, but creative nonetheless. The point is, I'm familiar with some darker sides of the internet long before Hypixel, and I'm sure for long afterwards. And I learned very early on to develop a thick skin and not let these sorts of deranged individuals bog me down when they decide to take their insecurities out on strangers from behind a screen because their parents didn't hug them enough or something. Sticks and stones and all that. But the thing is, when I was a staff member, at least I was dealing with all sorts of abuse for a reason, you know? I was helping out the server and could still have fun with the different games. So while it wasn't constantly sunshine and rainbows, I could still find enjoyment in the server. But once being a staff member wasn't a factor anymore, as time went on, that enjoyment and justification began to dwindle. I was still playing games, though most often with friends and a lot of times for content purposes. Very rarely was I logging on for my own fun unless I had something to record, largely because by then I'd been playing these minigames for years, and they'd simply become stale for me outside of a group setting or adding self-implemented challenges. But even so, it was generally fine. I was still most of the time satisfied with everything I was doing and the experience I had making content at the time, until I wasn't. See, I was making a fair amount of gameplay videos, not just for Hypixel, but for plenty of other games as well. Though what got the most attention was storytime videos, some lighthearted and some delving into more of the, for lack of a better word, drama side of the server, with the latter becoming more prevalent when the staff team as a whole took a turn for the worse, which had a massively negative impact on the server and player base. And suddenly, that became a significant part of my core content. I was a disgruntled former Hypixel staff member. I had been behind the scenes where most others hadn't. I had the information that was never supposed to be made public. I had the tea and was ready to spill it. And while these videos certainly did well in terms of analytics, I didn't want to be a drama channel or a Minecraft channel or, oh dear God, a Minecraft drama channel. Yeesh. So eventually, I started to move away from that type of content, and suddenly, without needing to record much of anything on the server, I found myself spending even less time on Hypixel. Partly because I was bored with a lot of the games, and partly because of the awful, terrible, horrific portion of the community that was still very much thriving and prosperous. Only now, I had basically no obligation whatsoever to deal with it anymore. And as I've talked about in that previous video I mentioned, the worst side of the community is for certain in the minority. But the problem is that not only are they the most vocal and prominent, but with much of the player base being teenagers, even when the toxic edgelords would grow up and either calm the fuck down and become decent human beings once they've matured, or just phase out of the server altogether, there would always be more to take their place, especially as the server boomed in popularity. All communities in every corner of the internet have their less than desirable individuals, the bad apples of the bunch. It just kinda comes with the territory of being online. But on Hypixel specifically, between inconsistent rules and guidelines over the years, a staff team that at multiple points in history had been severely mismanaged, and an overwhelming amount of opportunities for the competitive scene to get out of hand, toxicity has freely flourished and to an extent become ingrained in the culture of Hypixel. And I'm not gonna lie, being surrounded by such a negative atmosphere so frequently got a bit exhausting, and it was difficult just to have fun playing games, which, you know, is kinda the whole point of playing games. What little enjoyment I still had left for Hypixel was being slowly chipped away. My grip on the server had loosened, but I hadn't fully let go yet until one particular incident that finally shattered my entire perception, which took place last August on the Hypixel forums. It's always the damn forums! Why do I do this to myself? The sunk cost fallacy is real! I'll try to keep this bit of backstory as brief as I can. I promise it's important for context. But in 2020, I was meant to do a video collab on Hypixel with someone, but right away, a field of red flags started popping up. Not only did it appear that this person was potentially view-botting and sub-botting their YouTube channel, he also lied about multiple things, including his age, claiming he was older than he actually was, claimed to be the owner of another very popular channel, and he was consistently asking random questions, and I will remind everyone, we had literally just met and were complete strangers. But some questions included what I look like, how old I was, if I was in a relationship, asking me what it's like being in a relationship, what my job was since I worked as a nanny, asking me about the children I cared for, asking about my history with certain Hypixel admins, asking to see my in-progress videos, what my room looks like, and wanting to see pictures, what my ethnicity is, more about the Hypixel admins, stuff that was, at best, kind of awkward, and at worst, way too personal to be asking someone you don't know. That's basically how nearly all our conversations went over the course of a few weeks. Overall, I did my best to be polite and go along with these sorts of questions because my neurodivergence almost never allows me to advocate and set boundaries for myself, so it was generally uncomfortable. Even if he started out with good intentions, which at this point is debatable, I'd had more than enough experience with unfavorable guys on the server that I wasn't getting a good vibe, especially as I looked into the suspected dishonesty about his age and analytics. Maybe I was being overly cautious or paranoid, maybe not. Either way, if someone is uncomfortable in a situation, their feelings and boundaries are valid. Period. Eventually, I just started making excuses saying I was too busy with work and my own projects, which I actually was because of the pandemic. The collab never happened, and not too long after, he unfriended me on Discord once he realized I wouldn't be useful to him for his original goal, which I suspect was boosting his numbers to get some real people over on his channel, since mine was in a period of gaining a little bit more traction at the time, which certainly wasn't the first time anyone's tried to do this, but it's for sure the most obvious instance with the context and information given. Content warning for this next part. Mentions of grooming and child abuse. Yeah, this gets super weird really quickly. Skip to this timestamp if you'd like to avoid it. Fast forward to this past August, and oh hey, wouldn't you know it, we come across each other on the forums, and he starts posting on my profile. Real quick, I wanted to address, I know in a lot of my past videos I would often block out the names in situations like this, and of course I will not be condoning or encouraging harassment or hate of anyone involved here. But I'm not going to censor names today because A, there's far too much for me to be bothered with all that, and B, this floppity guy had the unyielding audacity to post this entire conversation on my public forum profile before staff deleted it for what will become obvious reasons, rather than speak to me in a private message, so he's clearly already perfectly fine with this being displayed publicly. Anyway, pause if you want to read the full screenshots, but TLDR, he started off by once again asking personal questions in rapid succession to someone he still doesn't really know. And when I stated I was uncomfortable with that and attempted to set boundaries, he threw a massive tantrum, hurling a plethora of insults at me, and heavily implying that I was continuing to be part of the Hypixel community as a groomer to take advantage of minors. Let me repeat that. I state I'm uncomfortable with the conversation he initiated, and as a result, I get accused of being a child groomer for simply existing in a community for a game where the average player age is in the mid-20s and all the server staff are legally required to be adults. Did you pull a muscle with that massive reach? It's a shame the Olympics don't give out awards for mental gymnastics, because this dude would get the gold. Okay, I'll stop. I could go all day. I won't, but I could. It's almost ludicrously genius, in a way, how when I say I'm not comfy with this, he keeps harping on repeatedly about how I'm playing the victim in this scenario somehow. Like, he's preemptively trying to force me to supposedly prove his point if I respond with anything other than just sitting there and enduring abuse and gaslighting. Maybe he's like the ultimate troll and he was just playing the real long game over the course of multiple years, which, honestly, after some of the shit I've dealt with on Hypixel, I would not be surprised. So, absurdity and ridiculousness of this situation aside, he did get me thinking with his initial question he started off with. Did you quit Hypixel? At first, I had initially denied it, which was technically true despite my severely diminished activity, and yet, I couldn't help but wonder, why even am I still here? At that point, I hadn't really recorded anything on Hypixel in about a year. At most, I was logging in sometimes to jump into Skyblock for a couple minutes and collect items. Maybe farm some stuff or do a game or two with friends or for a stream, but that was mostly it. The games aren't as enjoyable anymore. The community is clearly in the toilet and frequently driving out more sensible people. I already work in childcare. I don't need to be surrounded by even more screaming children who haven't learned how to deal with their emotions properly. Only difference is some of them are still in diapers and others who are old enough to use a keyboard should know better. What redeeming qualities could there possibly be to keep me on the server? And after some consideration, I determined there were none. Why should I continue to exist in this hellscape if I'm not even having any fun? I have years worth of great memories and made so many friends here, which had me reluctant to pull the plug for so long. Oh man, there's that damn sunk cost fallacy again. But memories don't do anything for the present, and all those friends moved on from the server a long time ago as well. I'm well aware that most of my starting audience did originate from Hypixel, and some people might unsubscribe over this, which is absolutely fine if I'm no longer uploading videos to your interest or making content that you mainly came here for. I just can't force myself to do something for the sake of appeasing viewers if I'm not going to be happy creating it. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to make a whole video on this topic. Honestly, I was content letting my presence on Hypixel just sort of fade away. But I know there's still people wondering if I'll ever be active again or make more Hypixel videos, and I figured it would be best to be upfront and honest rather than leaving some viewers in the dark with unanswered questions. And I'm sure there's some who are cheering my departure, which honestly, same bestie! We could actually agree on something for once. I've been miserable here for ages, trying to cling desperately to better times, and it's such a relief to finally be able to let go. And I encourage anyone, if you're in a similar situation or in an environment where you feel stuck and really unsatisfied, doesn't even have to be Hypixel, it could be anything. Don't be afraid to put your own happiness and sanity first. So there it is. I've officially quit Hypixel. Are you happy now, you freaking weirdo? Although I'm no longer logging into Hypixel just for myself, occasionally my Discord server is able to twist my arm into joining a few times a year for our monthly community games, which are a pretty good time in small doses. Perhaps once in a blue moon, if the stars and planets align just right and something memorable actually happens, maybe I'll even post a gameplay video here. But definitely don't count on it. Though if you're interested, I do stream a variety of games, including non-Hypixel related Minecraft, several days a week on Twitch and post videos here to YouTube every weekday. So hopefully for at least some of you, perhaps you'll find something else here that suits your fancy. And if not, and you're focused solely on Hypixel, well, I sincerely wish you the best of luck. You might need it. And yes, I will probably be playing Hytale if/when it's ever released. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you folks later. Bye!